Hello and welcome back to another episode of LMS Cast. I'm joined by a special guest. He's back on the show. He was on maybe 5 years ago or something like that. We've got Brad Williams. He's from ThemeSwitcher Pro, which you can find on ThemeSwitcher.com. He's also a founder of Web Dev Studios, which is an awesome agency. The Lifter LMS website was actually designed by Web Dev Studios. They're an awesome company. But first, welcome to the show, Brad.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Chris. It's funny. I forgot I was on this show. I guess that means it has been a while. So
You and
I'll look up
Lisa
that
were
episode
on.
number. I wonder what number that was.
You and Lisa were on together. It was a
Okay,
tag team show.
like 5 years ago. Yeah, that was like the before times. So I don't, it's a little fuzzy back then.
It was a while
But I'm
ago.
back.
You're back, and you've got
Back,
a new
back bigger.
project, Theme Switcher. Which once you
Yep.
told me about that at a conference, I was like, "Oh, that's cool." And let me do my high level of why I got excited about it.
Yeah.
Um, so what Theme Switcher Pro does is it allows you to use different WordPress themes on different parts of your website.
hmm
And in the learning management system space, one of the early questions we get from people is, should I do a subdomain or not? And one of the main reasons we advise people to do a subdomain for the LMS is because they already have this massive website, but they really want to use all our tech, including our full site editing theme,
hmm
SkyPilot, but they can't get their head around redoing the whole site. So we're just like, put it on a subdomain. And there's
hmm
other reasons to put it on a subdomain. But this idea that you can, do web design more one piece at a time, kind of
hmm
in the live environment, and maybe you want Elementor and Astra over here, and you want something else over here. It's awesome. But tell us the genesis of
Yeah.
Theme Switcher Pro and why you guys decided to build it over at Web Dev Studios.
Yeah, yeah. Thanks, Chris. So ThemeSwitcher Pro. So at Web Dev Studios, we're an agency that's been working with WordPress we're in our 17th year. So we've been doing this for a long time, focused on the WordPress platform, building WordPress for kind of mid-tier to enterprise level organizations, larger companies, more complex challenges, more content, bigger traffic. So very experienced in the WordPress space. And we've had a number of products over the years, and we still do. That really we built. Some we just built for fun. Some we felt like were really important utilities for WordPress, like custom post type UI is our most popular one, which allows anyone to register custom post types through the dashboard, through the UI of WordPress. Very much a utility. It's a free plugin that we've had out there for a long, long time. But the genesis of ThemeSwitcher Pro really came from our clients, right? So we have a lot of clients that are on the kind of a classic legacy WordPress setup, right? They have a theme that was built a number of years ago, before Gutenberg, before the block editor, or when the block editor was early and new, and they weren't comfortable going down that road. But now the block editor is very refined. It's a very powerful tool. It's a great tool. And companies want to leverage the block editor. The challenge is, how do they get from classic legacy WordPress to the block editor? Well, traditionally it is rebuild the whole website, right? Redesign, rebuild the whole website, launch. What we've seen in the past few years is it's harder to get budgets approved at a higher, a larger amount. So the idea of let's rebuild our whole website so we can use this new block editor is a very tough sell to executives, up the chain of command. So because they don't care, right? The website looks fine. I don't care how you make the content. But marketers, content creators, admins of the website that really understand the block editor know the power that it can bring and how efficiently it can allow them to create new pages of content, landing pages, whatever, in a really beautiful way. So we started thinking about that. Well, if we can't get larger budgets approved, is there some way we can kind of chip away at a transition? Some way we can kind of iteratively, as you said, replace sections of the website with a new block-based theme, while other sections continue to do what they're doing, using the classic setup. And that's where ThemeSwitcher Pro was born. We started building out this technology for some clients, started integrating it and using it with some clients, and had a lot of success. And they were really enjoying how quickly we were able to get them to the point where they could produce block content on their production website, which was generally within like a month, maybe 2 months max. They're already producing content versus a full-blown redesign that might take 6 months, 8 months, 12 months before they can start creating block content. So we knew we had something, right? And then we started showing it off to some friends in the industry, some hosting company partners, and they said, look, you got to productize this. There's a need for this. There's so many sites out there stuck on classic. They don't know how to get to the block editor, and a rebuild is not an option. So ThemeSwitcher Pro. We built it into a plugin, and now very easily you can run, multiple themes across a single WordPress install. So what we're doing with a lot of our clients is we're building them a block-based theme. We're mimicking their header and footer from their classic site, so it looks exactly the same. And then we're styling up all the blocks through theme JSON and other methods so that it all fits their branding. It all is part of their website. And then at that point, they can deploy that theme and start using that theme for new content. So if they create a new page, a new post, a new feature section, whatever, they use the new theme. The header footer looks the same, but all the content in between is all block based. So it allows them to start really rapidly using patterns, blocks, and all the power of Gutenberg and the block editor. While again, the rest of their website is locked into that classic state. It's not going to touch that. It's only touching where you tell it to switch. So really opens up a lot of options, a lot of use case scenarios. We can talk about a lot of different ideas and how we're seeing people use it. But in my mind, it's a bit of a game changer because it gives not only website administrators and owners, but also freelancers, agencies, anyone building sites. It gives them a tool in their tool belt that they can go to their client and say, hey, we have a way we can start to transition you. And it isn't writing a 6-figure check. Right? Maybe it's writing, giving me $5,000 a month for 12 months or something while we slowly integrate this or chip away at it. So this is very much a tool that anybody can use. Freelancers, agencies, we hope and expect that other builders, implementers will want to take a look at ThemeSwitcher and see if it's a good tool for their clients, as well as just website administrators. It gives them an option. To your point, LMS, if I want to launch Lifter on my site, traditionally I would have to either switch the theme to your theme that works really, really well with Lifter, or update my theme so it makes sure it works really well with Lifter. Now you could just use your Lifter theme just on the LMS sections of your website, and everything else stays exactly the same. So products, I think there's a very interesting angle here for people like you, Chris, where you're selling a product, and our product now can help you sell more of your product, right? Because it gives them an option to use your theme and have a really nice experience with the LMS without blowing up their entire website, right? So really excited about it. The feedback's been great. Really enjoying talking to people like you and kind of sharing the story, because this is kind of an educational, piece to this, so people understand what it does. But I've been talking a lot. I just dumped a ton of information there. So that's kind of where we're at. It's exciting.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And the best products, in my opinion, like the customers pull it out of you.
Mm.
And I've literally had that question probably 100 times in 10 years. Hey, can I use 2 themes on my website?
Mhm.
And I'm like, no, you can't. Use a subdomain or
Not
get
easily.
creative or
Well,
whatever.
multi-site was always an option too, and we love multi-site. A lot of our clients use multi-site, so this is not to replace multi-site. There are definitely a lot of great use cases for multi-site. LMS even is a good use case where maybe the second site in the network, slash LMS is is Lifter. But not every site necessarily needs that. So this gives them some options. They don't have to go the multi-site route, but they can still get Lifter kind of in its own containerized section of your site running, your theme. So yeah, it's pretty cool when you start to think about the possibilities, what you can do with this.
And for the agencies, like you're saying, I'm always a big fan of, in service work, agency work, the land and expand. Like if I'm hitting you with this giant project, it's harder to sell that. But if you're like,
Mhm.
let's just get started and incrementally improve, focus on
Yeah.
priorities one at a time, like it totally makes sense. I mean, the agencies are going to love this. It's going to help them sell.
Yeah, I mean, it's I always tell our clients, and especially new leads we're working with, like we want to show you the value as quickly as possible, that you pick the right agency, you're working with the right people, and we are moving the needle with your, initiatives online as quickly as we can. So, you made the right choice. The higher ups are seeing movement, they're seeing things happening. This helps with that, right? Like I said, do you want to go through a 6 or 8 month redesign rebuild when all they really wanted, they like their site, they like the overall look and feel, but they hate the editor and they have struggle making good content? It's a perfect use case for that. Let's chip away at it. We have a client that's using it just for landing pages. They don't want to swap out their theme. So they don't plan to remove this over time. They plan to leave it there forever. And they're using it. Within 2 weeks, they were producing really powerful landing pages. And once you make one, and the power of patterns, you make that landing page pattern. Then within a couple clicks, you've just drafted a new landing page, and then you can swap out content, click tracking, scripts, whatever. But very quick, they're launching landing pages within a matter of hours now, when before it took weeks because they had to have developers come in and say, okay, I got all the content, but now we need you to tighten it up with CSS, get the alignment right on these images, make it look good, because it's really hard to do that in the WYSIWYG editor, the classic editor. Just putting 2 images side by side, is what feels like an impossible task unless you know how to code in the old editor. But in Gutenberg, it literally is a couple clicks. Put in the container, 2 columns, boom, boom, 2 images, and you're done, right? So once you really buy into it and really experience it, and especially see it, it's certainly on the patterns. I feel like you see this light bulb moment when people see how powerful patterns are and how quickly they can reuse those patterns throughout their website. You just kind of see their eyes get really wide, and it's a game changer. So the more people we can get on Gutenberg, the more people we can get building blocks and utilizing the power of patterns, the less people are going to be looking for alternatives to WordPress. They're using what we want them to use, which is the most modern tools available within our system. If they're still stuck on classic editor, they probably are very frustrated with WordPress, and is it WordPress's fault? No, but that's the perception, right? So again, the more people we get up to the block editor, the more people we get using modern WordPress, the tools that we've spent years building within the open source community, the better for the project. And hopefully this is a tool that people can use to do just that.
Let's talk more about use cases. You mentioned the kind of the marketer who wants to do some campaigns and landing pages. Maybe somebody wants to just redo only the homepage and start there. Where do you see people, and what would you advise agencies and brainstorm with them about, like, well, where are the most high value places in a WordPress site that I could focus on first with a block-based theme?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think it always is going to depend on the business and like what's their business and what's important to them on their website. The big question I would say to ask is, do we want to start with a very impactful section of the website, like the homepage, or maybe the single article page if you're a media site that just gets a ton of traffic, or do you want to start somewhere that's a little less impactful? Maybe your about page, maybe your FAQ, something that is important but not the most important thing on your website. So that's the number one question we like to ask. And generally speaking, the answer is they wanted to go with the more impactful, which is surprising, right? I feel like most people would want to dip their toe in a little bit. They're like, nope, let's replace the homepage. Great, let's do that. So we had a client we worked on where 95% of their traffic goes right to the single articles. It's a media site. People, it's very discoverable on search engines, very shareable on social. So all their traffic goes to their articles. Their homepage is a sliver of their traffic. So guess what? We replaced the single article page. That's the first page we did. And then we let it ride for a while, just to kind of let the dust settle. But not only did it work well, it's now they're able to produce with blocks. It's really given their content creators a lot more power in what they're doing. But it's also really increased the performance of the website, because I haven't even touched on this, but as you know, blocks and the way blocks work and the way it's built are just way more performant than classic WordPress. So immediately their core web vitals and their page speed insight scores, got much, much better and got all the way up into the green, which for a site that had a ton of ads and legacy is very hard to get to. Ads are really the challenge there. But very quickly, not only we're seeing better traffic, people stay on the site longer, but also it's just way more performant. So it's taking less resources off the server, or using less resources through the server. So it just has this kind of domino effect of good things when you start rolling out blocks. So again, it's different ways you can chip away at it. We also had right after we did that, we went in, started working on the homepage, but obviously the single article was the most important for them, right? So it's questions you want to ask your clients. What's the most important sections of your website? If you're selling products, your product pages are going to be the most important, right? If it's a service, it's going to be your features, your service pages, your pricing pages, people, what they're reading to determine if they want to make that purchase. So you want to think about that, but honestly, people like to see results. Companies, clients like to see results. So honestly, push for the more impactful, push to replace their homepage, because you know how much better it's going to be when you get into blocks and patterns. And hell, you don't even have to build your own theme, right? All the demos I'm putting down on YouTube, I'm using Ollie, I'm using Astra, I'm using these really powerful free themes out of .org, and they have premium versions, but the free themes are really, really good to start producing pages. So you could say, you know what? You could download our plugin, download free Ollie, activate on your site, and within literally 60 seconds, start producing block-based content on your legacy website using Ollie or Astra or whatever you want. So it's a huge game changer. And I think it's just understanding how flexible it is, that it gives not only the users, agencies, freelancers, but also website owners a lot of options in how they want to use it.
For the technical people out there, how does it at a high level work? Because I remember when you reached out to me to test, I'm like, we'll see. Let me see how this works. And, Lifter LMS is kind of complex. Like WooCommerce is the platform. There's all these custom post types and everything. And I just turned it on, and all the settings for Lifter components at a global level showed up.
Yeah.
And I like how on individual pages you can make a specific decision and everything, but it
Mhm.
just worked. Like, how
Yeah,
does
it just
this
works.
thing technically work?
I mean, it's magic. It's all pie in the sky. There's fairies and pixie dust, and no, it is very technical because I think on the surface it's like, okay, well, you're probably just running a function or two on the back end to say run this theme instead of that theme. Way more technical than that. And what it really gets down to it when you load Gutenberg. So imagine I'm on a classic WordPress site. I want to use Ollie, right? So as soon as I flip a page over or whatever over to Ollie, not only does Ollie have to power the front end, Ollie has to fully load in the back end in the block editor because all the patterns have to be loaded in, all the styles, everything that Ollie gives you, all that has to be loaded into the editor, which I don't think a lot of people realize, right? They think, oh, it's just blank Gutenberg. There's nothing. It had to load all the theme assets as soon as you go create add new page or add new post or add new whatever. That was the large technical challenge because even in the way that WordPress loads themes, it's not early enough to bring in all that stuff and just switch it. It's too late in the load process. So I'm not the right person to get into all the technicalities of it, but I can promise you, not only have we built this in a way that just works, like you said, but it's massively performant. You know, the site I mentioned that does single article page, that's a WordPress VIP site. This is running on WordPress VIP, and that site gets a significant amount of traffic. So, this has really been tested at scale with our clients, which gives us a lot of confidence that if it works at that level, at the really kind of enterprise big media level, it will work for 99.9% of the people out there running WordPress, right? So because performance was such a big thing for us, we can't roll out a tool and recommend it to our clients if it's going to be a massive performance hit or really any performance hit, right? Like you can't do that. Performance is so important on the web. The site has to be fast or you're going to drop search engine ranking. People are going to bounce quickly on your site because it's slow loading. We don't have attention spans online. I want what I want right now, right? So we prioritize performance at the forefront of everything to make sure it's lightning fast. And of course, you always need good caching layers and all that stuff, but it's built to perform. So, but it does work really well. It uses all core WordPress. If you have custom post types registered, they're automatically going to show up on the dashboard, and you can say, "Yep, I have my movies section. I want to replace movies with this other theme." Ollie. It'll start every movie page will start running Ollie. Um, Also, since we're talking the technical side, the one thing I do want to mention too is, this is really built by developers for developers. So there is an admin UI that allows you to do certain things, but it's also fully controlled through code. So you can write, we have all sorts of hooks and filters, and you can tap into almost any WordPress conditional and do a theme switching case conditional. So you could say, hey, if user Brad logs in, we're going to run the Brad theme, right? Or if it's after 5 p.m. local time, we're going to run the evening theme, So like you can just imagine how crazy and flexible this could be, and being able to control it by code is really going to be a requirement, especially at the higher level development, because everything needs to go through a code repository. There needs to be accountability around what's happening, where the code's committed. You don't want a client that doesn't really understand what they're doing to go in there and start checking features and saving it, and all of a sudden your theme switch and you didn't realize what was happening. So you can control this whole thing by code, which is what I would expect most developers would probably want to do.
Very cool. Tell us about the like page builders. So as an example, Elementor is really popular. I think probably 30% of Lifter LMS users use Elementor. They're kind of on the either using Elementor's Hello theme or something like Astra or Cadence or something underneath it. Page builders are plugins. So how should people think about it if they're, kind of full site editing curious, but they're really kind of wrapped into this page building world?
Yeah. Well, it does fully work with page builders. So we want to make sure, again, a number of the clients that we've worked with or we're in process of transitioning are on page builders. Elementor generally the one we see the most. So we want to make sure it works with all the top page builders: Elementor, Divi, Beaver Builder, Cadence, those type of builders. So, but it works, right? So if your whole site's built with Elementor, you can still go in there and say, all right, I want to switch my homepage to Astra, or I want to switch my single post template to Ollie, right? And then when you hit those pages, it just essentially, it no longer is going to run Elementor because at the theme switching layer, it knows, hey, we're switching off Elementor over to this. And so it'll load all those Ollie assets or Astra assets instead of Elementor. So you can absolutely use this with those. And many of the clients we're recommending to are on page builders, because look, page builders are great. There's definitely there is a market for page builders, or a good fit for a lot of people. But what we're seeing is a lot of companies, marketing companies, agencies, people that don't really specialize on WordPress, but they build sites, right? Leaning almost too heavily on page builders. So there's a lot of clients walking in the door that have this massively complex website that was built in Elementor, and it's like it was a wrong decision, right? A really complex website like that, in my mind, should not be built using a page builder. It just gets too hairy and too complicated. So, so we're kind of unpacking that using ThemeSwitcher to get them back to the block editor. Remove that extra layer of complexity, right? Especially we talk performance. Page builders, they add that really strong layer of complexity, and then all those decisions you're making on designs and layouts, that's all stored in your database, right? So it has to be retrieved on page load. Of course, it can be cached, but it's just extra overhead that's happening to load that page. You can get rid of all that. You can get rid of that and just go with Gutenberg. No extra page load. It's what's already loading. So, so again, it's an option. People are on page builders and looking to transition, or to use it as a tool alongside your page builder. Like I mentioned, this isn't a tool that you have to have a plan to remove. Certainly, if your plan is to transition to a block theme over time, once you actually transition every section of your website, you could remove the plugin and just activate your new theme, and you're done, right? The plugin's gone and your new theme is fully active, your new block theme. Or it could just be a secondary tool that you plan to use forever, right? You keep it on your website. You have your site built with Elementor, which is great, but you want to launch an LMS, right? You want to launch Lifter, and you know what? I don't want to figure out how to do that in Elementor. So I want to use your theme, Chris. So boom, /LMS, and all those pages can all be, on your theme. So, so again, a lot of tools, a lot of options, a lot of use cases, but page builders are a big part of it, because they're so dominant. There's so many sites running page builders. We want to make sure that this fully supports them, and it's a tool that people could use if they're using one.
We talked a little bit about patterns and full site editing. I'm not an engineer, and once I kind of realized the power of Gutenberg with, like you said, building landing page pattern template I could reuse, and like the copying, I can go to a part of my site and just copy a group of stuff or a whole page and just paste it somewhere else.
Yeah, it's so cool.
I remember the old world where everything was like, all right, contact a developer, need a custom template. It's not very flexible.
Yeah.
I couldn't go make changes to the template when I found some kind of upgrade or something. That's what really sold me on full site editing. But what else do you love about it?
Yeah. So, and just to be clear, there's, and people listening probably know the distinction between it, but you have the block editor, which is Gutenberg, the block editor, that's your content area, right? And then full site editing is essentially expanding that so you can use that editor throughout your whole site layout, header, footer, sidebars, whatever, right? You can use essentially blocks to build out your site. To be clear, right now, ThemeSwitcher Pro does not support full site editing fully. We baked in some support, but started going down a few rabbit holes. And since it's still evolving, we're like, let's just focus on the block editor, at least for the launch. It's definitely on the roadmap as things evolve and that feature gets more tightened up. But I do see there is a use case, right? Because it's the idea of a page builder, but kind of built right into WordPress core. It still has a ways to go. I don't know if you've used it on any of your production websites, like full site editing. In fact, ThemeSwitcher.com is a full FSE enabled theme that we built. It works. It's okay. I think it has a little ways to go. I really struggled with like the menu, and like just adding things to the menu was a bit challenging, which was surprising. I see the direction they're going, but it feels like, Gutenberg back when it was like the first couple releases, right? Kind of works, but definitely needs polished. And that's kind of waiting for more of that polish before we bake in that full support for the full site editor.
Web Dev Studios, you mentioned, like you help medium to like enterprise, and you've got some big brands on your site, like the NBA, Campbell's Soup, Starbucks, Microsoft. Tell us, like, what's a really big site? Like, how many pages? Because just this problem of like, hey, if you land a big client, it's hard to convince them to do the whole thing all at once. And this is where ThemeSwitcher comes in. But how big are some of these sites you've worked on?
I mean, there are millions and millions of pieces of content. Now, to be fair, on the ThemeSwitcher side, it hasn't been at that extreme level. But, these media sites, we're talking, tens of thousands of posts, articles, if not more. They're producing 5, 10, 15 unique articles a day. They have editorial teams that are writing. So and that's some of the sites we've integrated it with. That's worked really well. But in terms of just sheer size, I mean, we've worked on some massive things, and WordPress can scale and basically do anything. I remember one of the largest projects we ever did, you mentioned Microsoft, was the old MSDN developer network, if you remember. It was really important 20 years ago because it was essentially a blog network of Microsoft employees, but they were sharing a lot of information that helped a lot of us learn how to do things back in the day, especially when like .NET was new and things like that. So we helped them migrate from this proprietary platform over to a WordPress multi-site network, and they were, I think, 90 or 95,000 when we were done sites in the network, blogs in the network for the whole MSDN, and it was tens of millions of articles and content that we had to migrate into WordPress and the multi-site. It was a massive migration, as you can imagine. And it took days to even run. So at scale, we've done a lot. WordPress can do it. We've seen a lot of sites out there that are, just running massive amounts of traffic. And it works, it works well.
I got to ask you the number one question for the agencies and the site builders out there. How do you get those medium and even big enterprise clients? Like, let's say there's an agency and they're wanting to, move outside a small business a little bit and get a little bit bigger client. What advice would you have for them to, try to develop those clients?
Yeah, it's a good question. And honestly, like, I think it's certainly luck is part of it. I mean, we landed our first kind of, well-known client name years ago on a flight to WordCamp San Francisco, sitting next to a lady that was flying out to find developers. It was Time Magazine, so it was like our first real big brand, and it opened a door, gave us opportunity, and we landed it. And then once you get one, it certainly becomes a little easier because you can have the logo. You can say, yeah, we did this for Time. We can do this for you. But I think aside from that, I think a lot of it is projecting that you work on those type of clients, making sure your website aligns with that. Like you hit our website and you can tell there's some big brands on there that are recognizable, so it kind of gives you a sense of the type of projects, the size of projects. Although you'd be surprised, people reach out and have a very small budget. And I'm like, what about our logo? These logos gave you that idea. But you want to project that. Like if you're talking to a big brand and they go look at their website, what are they going to think, right? Are they going to say, well, this looks pretty amateur? Or are they going to think, yeah, this looks legit, like who we want to work with? They do good work. And just put yourself out there. Like, when WebDev first started, nobody knew who we were. And we were just getting into WordPress, and we started getting involved in the community and contributing to open source. And that led to some speaking opportunities at WordCamps, and they're just getting started. And very quickly, we kind of grew our name for ourselves just by this kind of guerrilla marketing of showing up and contributing, right? And next thing you know, our name was out there a lot. We're speaking at a lot of events, and then more and more things started to show up. So there's not as many events these days, but I think even doing what you're doing right here, Chris, like this is getting yourself out there, getting me out there, getting your guests on the show out there. So even just getting on people's podcasts, talking shop, like, making people aware that what you're talking about, is helpful, so it's there's no right answer, but I think one, making sure you're presenting that you are that type of company that works with larger brands and you have those capabilities. And someone doesn't mean you have to have a staff of 100 people, but project that on your website that you have not a staff of 100 people, but you have a very solid company, work with larger companies, you have support, you have what they need. And then, things will happen. There's a lot of opportunities because it's right now, people are looking to save money, even large corporations, they're not spending what they were a year ago. So there's good opportunities for people to come in and make some things happen, at potentially a lower price point that gives them that opportunity that maybe they wouldn't have had a year or two ago. So
You have some insight into that, who WordPress is for, like where it fits? Because I know this is a big question and you could do a whole talk on it, but like whether it's a small business, a medium-sized business, or even enterprise, there's so many like site building solutions, Webflow, and all the rest. Like, when does WordPress really stand out as like, oh, this is a perfect fit for this kind of client?
Yeah, that's the big question, right? Like, I think that is one of the challenges of WordPress, because we're trying to be everything to everybody, and it's no different than running an agency and saying, we do WordPress work. Well, what type of projects? Well, whatever, right? Like, that could be anything. It could be a $500 blog or a $500 million, website. So, it's a tough question, man, because it is so flexible. You know what I mean? Like, it can be used for everything. So how do you focus in on what that means. I've always really gone to the fact that I feel like WordPress, one of the reasons WordPress has gotten so popular over the years is it's intuitive. It's there's been a lot of focus on the UI UX. Doesn't mean there's not more we can do, certainly, but if you just log someone into a WordPress website that's never seen it before and say, see if you can figure out how to publish a post, they'll probably be able to figure out how to publish a post. It may not look great. It may just be the title and they don't realize they need to add blocks, but they'll probably figure out how to add the title and hit publish, right? Like, so I feel like the intuitiveness of it has always really helped. So I think, people looking for a system that's, easy to use, obviously has a huge ecosystem. That's another big, huge benefit to WordPress is the ecosystem, the products that are out there, the services, how long it's been around, big teams behind these products or teams that, you can trust and support. So, intuitiveness, flexibility, UI, UX stuff, and just the ease of content. Like as long as WordPress doesn't lose focus of its core, which is creating content, it's a content management system. It's all about the content. Then I think we'll be okay. We're never going to dominate. We're never going to be 100% usage. We're never going to be, everyone's like, oh no, it's shrinking. I'm like, it's not shrinking. It's plateaued a bit in the last year. That's true.
But 43%
but even if it shrinks,
is pretty
it doesn't
good.
mean the end of the world, right? Yeah, 43.5% right now. It's an insane number that's hard to wrap your head around, like that's a lot of sites. And that's just kind of the known internet, right? Forget all the local installs and all the things that people doing behind firewalls that block, tracking. And so it's just a staggering number. So I think people need to remember that even if it goes down 1% or 2%, it's a staggering number, but yeah, it's a tough question. I think it's more about showcasing what it can do in different verticals, different angles. Like there's talk about, rebranding WordPress or getting some marketing help, blah, blah, blah. Like WordPress for e-commerce, WordPress for publishers, WordPress for small business, like really having these focused landing pages, sections that explain why WordPress is good for a small business, right? Why it's easy. It's generally the costs are going to be cheaper once you get set up ongoing, things like that. So just, there's so many niches and verticals it's great for, but the message of it's everything to everybody is not a good message. It needs to be more focused in some areas. So I don't have good answers there. I'm sure smarter people out there hopefully can figure it out, but it's a challenge with any business. I always thought when people are like, oh, I want to should I start building websites with WordPress? A lot of people say, no, it's too saturated. I'm like, do it, but just try to find a niche. It'll make it easier to market. Like maybe it's WooCommerce, maybe it's Lifter, like find a niche. And that way your marketing is so targeted on not just WordPress, but WordPress, and you're going to start to stand out. You're going to start to stand out from the pack versus me. Our challenge is we do WordPress, right? Like it's not, and it's like we do WordPress. So that makes our marketing harder, which is why we get people to walk in the door with a $500 budget and a $500,000 budget, because it's tough to us to market just to that higher level,
In terms of the kind of land and expand approach, which ThemeSwitcher Pro really helps with, what advice do you have for somebody to like develop a client relationship and keep it going? Like when I worked with Web Dev Studios, it was professional all the way through the sales process, the communication, the weekly calls, the scheduling, the team that came for different parts. It was like super professional.
Thanks, Chris.
And if I had unlimited budget, I would just like keep going.
Keep going.
And but how do you do that? Like what's some of the pro tips you have for land and expand and good?
Yeah, land and expand is a good way to describe it. And that's really our goal, right? Like, and we tell clients, I get very honest when I say clients, leads walking in the door. I get very honest with them. Like, look, we're all about partnerships and relationships. Yes, we want to rebuild your website. Yes, we want to help you with your online goals, but we also want to be there for the long haul. And I really appreciate my team. Like if we can help our clients be successful, if they're successful, we will inherently be successful, because why would they go anywhere else? Like if we're helping them succeed online, if we're helping, increase their sales or their conversion or their bounce rates are getting better, whatever their goals are, if we're helping them meet or exceed those goals, they're never going to go anywhere else. Right. So that's always our goal is if we're doing a website rebuild, we want to rebuild a site, but then we also want to be an ongoing partnership. So we'll set up something like an ongoing retainer, a monthly retainer. Maybe we have set number of hours every month that we're dedicated to them, and then we can schedule it out. And then we just work through their initiatives. I always like to also preach that we're not task takers. We're going to bring our recommendations, and I say, let's sit at the table. The client knows their business inside and out. We know WordPress on the web inside and out. We all sit at the same table together. We're going to make the best decisions for your online goals and initiatives, right? And then we can help execute on those. So always be thinking, yes, there's going to be that initial project. It might be a build. It might just be some one-off tasks they need help with. But you always want to be thinking, how do I establish a longer ongoing relationship? Because to be very honest, getting more retainers and recurring revenue really helped us, especially through, the past 4 or 5 years with the uncertainty and the ups and downs and, lockdown, all of that. When new projects weren't always walking the door, we still had our monthly retainers that were keeping us going, like keeping us busy. We're still doing that stuff. So think about that, because you don't want to just be a one and done. You jump to the next one. You want to cultivate relationships, build those relationships. And over time, you start to build a kind of a Rolodex of clients you've had for years that are giving you, bringing in money month in and month out. Right. And that's how you really start to grow into really, solid and viable business in this space.
One of the key things you said is we're going to make recommendations. Like, what are some examples of like proactive recommendations that lead to more work?
A lot of it's around performance. Like, think about things that clients care about, right? And it's ranking search engines, which is directly related to performance in a big way. That's a huge one for us. We're always running page speed insight tests. We're always running speed tests and looking for opportunities that we can go to the client and say, hey, like, you just uploaded an image that's like 10 megs. We could either convert that for you, or better yet, let's integrate a system that does that automatically, right? You upload whatever image you want and it will make a nice WebP format for you. Those type of opportunities, you can always bring a client, and you really will stand out as, you'll look like a thought leader, because you're being proactive, right? Look at things like security. Every client we engage with, I go through a checklist and we hand it them and say, hey, here's the things we could do to help enhance your security. 2-factor authentication, we're happy to integrate that. Maybe a single sign-on, strong password policies, whatever that is. Like, most sites are not doing any of that, right? That's some quick wins. And they're thinking, oh, they're really thinking about security. That's great. Like, you want to be proactive and thinking about the things they're not thinking about, but supports the goals that they are thinking about, right? So performance and speed are going to help them rank better, and search engines are going to help people stay on the website longer. That's a goal for them, right? So get that site as fast as you can. You need to be perfect if you can on Core Web Vitals, or as close as you can. Security is another one. Accessibility is another one. It's not only important, it's the right thing to do. Like, I preach this to my team and our clients. Like, we make the web as accessible as we can. I don't care if it's a client requirement. We're making it accessible. And the only time we won't is if it's literally a client is telling us it has to be this color scheme. We inform them that is whatever, it doesn't pass the test, and then we would do it if they tell us to. But generally speaking, the clients want to be accessible too, because it could open them up to legal situations, right? Like, yes, generally speaking, they want accessible web, but what's their goal? Not to get sued, right? So let's make your website accessible. Let's integrate things that can help automate that. AI is a great use case for like automating alt text, the things that people just never do or forget to do. Automate it. If there's a 15-step checklist to publish something, they're never going to do all 15 unless it's required. How can you make that like 3 or 4 things, and then all those other things are automated, right? Oh, I uploaded an image, I forgot to fill in the alt text. AI fills it in. Hey, it's a picture of a dog on a park bench. Boom. That's perfect. It's accessible. That's what it needs to say. So look for those opportunities that you can bring, because those are the biggies: speed, performance, security, accessibility. Those are some big ones that there's almost always things you can do there. Look for new versions of WordPress. 6.8 just came out. Great opportunity to sit down. What new features should my clients care about in this release? There is that pre-loading of pages and content stuff. That's interesting, right? From a performance standpoint. So that's something you want to research. Always look at new versions and say, what could my clients use that are in here? And then you come to them and say, hey, new version's out. Let me walk through some features I think you'll care about. Now you're a partner. Now it's not just client agency. You're a partner. You're thinking about them. You're thinking about their success. And that stuff goes a long way towards building those relationships and getting them to trust that you're trying to help. You're helping them make the best decisions for their online goals. I mean, some of the and I'll end it on this point, but some of the toughest clients are the ones that don't go with your recommendations. And I'm not saying they should always just blindly say yes, yes, yes to everything we recommend. But if it's constant pushback and they hired you because you're the expert, but they're constantly pushing back on what you're recommending, that's a big red flag that you might want to take a step back and say, wait a minute, like, why? You hired me. I'm the expert, but you were literally doing everything I tell you should not be doing. It's not going to end well for either side. They're not going to be happy with the results because they're not listening to you. And you're not going to be happy because you're going to feel like you're getting blamed for things that shouldn't be your fault, right? So look out for that. But generally speaking, most people they want your advice, they want your help. They hired you for a reason. Sometimes it's good to remind yourself that. They hired you because you're the expert. So show them that.
So that's Brad Williams from Web Dev Studios. Go check out webdevstudios.com. Put ThemeSwitcher Pro in your toolkit. It's awesome. We're going to be doing some content at Lifter on how to use it and why to use it and where to use it and all that. That's at ThemeSwitcher.com.
Mhm.
Anywhere else for people to go or connect with you, Brad?
Yeah, I mean, I'm on all the socials, Twitter and Blue Sky at Williams BA, or Blue Sky. I'm Brad Williams. Just search me. I like link my domain. It's not really easy to say. And then we've been putting out some cool YouTube videos too. So if you search Web Dev Studios on YouTube, we got a couple of ThemeSwitcher videos. I've tweeted them. They're on socials too. But within a couple minutes, you can see this in action. We got examples of from block to block theme. We got example and a one I just posted of classic editor to block, and just clicking that save draft button on classic editor and seeing the whole thing flip. I mean, it is just like a whoa, this is a cool moment, So, but do reach out if you have any questions, any thoughts. It's new, so really trying to get feedback. I'm doing a demo with an agency owner right after this. If anybody would like a demo or just have questions, whatever, feel free to reach out. It's Brad@webdevstudios.com. But yeah, I really appreciate it, Chris. I've always enjoyed our friendship or partnership. You putting your trust in our company to help your company. And I think this is just the next evolution of us helping each other through our products, right? So super excited to get this out there, and really excited to know this is one that I know your clients are going to be very interested in. So thanks for having me.
Awesome, Brad. Well, thanks for coming on, and we'll have to do it again sometime.
Absolutely.